Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good morning, Rod. I'm well. Here we are on the 18th of May in glorious sunshine. I think it looks good where you are. So we're enjoying very much spring. Are we in summer yet?
Yeah, it feels like it. Feels like we've been in summer for weeks. I think there's droughts thrown by you.
We haven't had a hosepipe ban, which is normally the sign of a drought. But yeah, we get loads of water all at once, and then we get no water for a long time, and we're not very good at storing it in the interim. So no drought yet, but it does feel like it will be coming because it's incredibly dry, and one of us is trying to grow grass seed, which is the worst time to do it when there's no water coming from the sky. So yeah, I'm struggling a little bit.
Yeah, that's a problem. It's sort of a flick into media a little bit, but I saw a trailer for Clarkston's Farm Season 4 this week, and there was no moisture, and his fields look completely brown, and he's not far away from you, so...
He's not far away at all, but that must be last year, though, because they would have filmed it last year, I'd have thought, because normally they film it quite a long time before they air it.
I don't know. Well, we can talk about it in media anyway, but it's dry and sunny, and has been for weeks.
And it's episode 173, and it's the 18th of May.
It certainly is. I think. Should we just dive straight into follow-up? I think we've had our weather chat.
Yeah, let's get into follow-up, and it's all about Fortnite, isn't it?
Well, it's indirectly all about Fortnite. It's more about Apple's response by Judge Gonzalez's ruling that things must happen. So when we had that discussion 3 weeks ago now, Apple must change things. They must allow the ability to link out. So we quickly saw that turnaround from Patreon and Spotify and others. And, of course, Epic, who started all this, immediately said, right, we're going to submit Fortnite to put it back in the App Store now that the rules have changed, even though they really hadn't changed from that point of view. Is that a decent summary, I think?
Yeah, I think so. I think... I don't feel in the same place as me, but it's annoying and frustrating in equal measures. I get why Apple are fighting, but it would have been nice for them to be the bigger person sometimes and go, right, we've heard everybody, this is what we're doing worldwide. Yes, there's going to be we advise our shareholders there's going to be a change in policy and an impact on money we're going to make, but we're going to be the bigger person in the room and live by our company values. But Apple aren't doing that, are they?
They're not, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in the main show, to be honest. But that's sort of the flavour for it. Anyway, what happened was Epic said they were going to submit this. They submitted something, and then a couple of things happened. Was it on Friday even? It came up. You said, hey, have you seen the ruling on text to me? So I checked it out, and this is the first thing I saw, that Fortnite was offline on iOS around the world. So it was like, not only was Apple going to make a decision, but the decision was, even in marketplaces and things like that, it was offline.
Yeah, which is just in the EU at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, well, just in the EU, although as we look at Brazil, I think it's very quickly going to happen in Brazil as well. But for the moment, that was Apple, it seemed, reaching into the marketplaces and actually switching it off, which I didn't think was even possible, actually. I thought the marketplaces were entirely independent entities.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
So whatever.
But I guess though if you submit to the marketplace, you still got to go through Apple's checking. I can't think what it's called. So I guess they do still have ultimate control. I don't know.
Well, they don't have ultimate control, but there's you've got to sign your APK, not APK. That's the Android thing. Your deliverable to
your IPS.
Your IPS. With Apple to make sure that it doesn't contain viruses, and they said, and that happened in the court case before as well. Or within the DMA ruling, that they said they were never going to interfere with that, and Riley at one point testified to say, no, that's been fine, and then they changed it, and they stopped signing a couple of things to let it happen. So once it's there, though, I didn't think it was anything to do with Apple. The submission thing to be signed then, but anyway, it seemed that Fortnite had gone offline even in marketplaces.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
And then very quickly, as we fire through our websites here, it claimed it wasn't blocking Epic from offering Fortnite in the EU. So this is the plot thickened, basically, that something else was going on. That Fortnite said Apple had blocked their Fortnite submission on X. This was Epic Fortnite talking for this. But Apple said they hadn't. So it's a bit he said, she said at this point.
Yeah, I wonder what happened here.
Yeah, I mean, the cynical view, you could say, Apple said no to the American submission, and Epic, in a fit of pique, switched it off everywhere just to go, look what can happen now when Apple say no.
Could be, or maybe as Apple said no to the US, they inadvertently turned it off in the EU and quickly backtracked.
Yeah, and then switched it back on again. I don't know what the path of events is. At some point it may come out, I guess, but it's a bit weird, really. And then the sort of final result of this is, unsurprisingly, Epic are quite litigious. Apple are quite litigious. Epic asking the court to compel Apple to reinstate Fortnite on the App Store. And then we're back to what you said a minute ago, which is this is just so childish.
It is childish, but I don't really understand what leg Apple has to stand on to block Epic in the States, because I know they broke the rules once. Does that mean they're now blackballed forever? But surely they haven't got a leg anymore, because, I don't know. It's all a bit odd.
It is a bit odd. I mean, Apple are a company that seems to carry a grudge. We talked about this before. They carry a grudge for Nvidia. They've carried a grudge for others. And if you're a media person and you see something negative and you've been on the inside, then you're very quickly on the outside, it seems. Because Epic did this charging in the using outside of in-app purchase, which is where all this started years ago, and Apple ejected them for breaking the rules. And Judge Gonzalez actually said at some point, that's fine, of course you can eject somebody for breaching your rules. That was one of the things they won in their court case. But surely, as you just said a minute ago, in the process of making money and these things being on your platform and bringing people in to play it, you'd want as many eyeballs as you can, making use of iOS devices. An M4 iPad running Fortnite would probably be incredible. You'd get better experience than you'd get on most consoles and some gaming PCs. So it'd be a real sort of exemplar of what the platform is capable of. And they're just like, nope, you broke the rules, you're out, you're forever out.
I just find this whole thing really bizarre.
Apple are acting really bizarre, but again, let's save that for the main show a little bit. But
Agreed.
It's just the most incredible story, and kind of went exactly the way I thought it would. Epic saying they were going to have Fortnite back in iOS was never a dead cert.
No, it wasn't. They were speaking as if it was a dead cert. It's a bit like when you say to your kid, "Yeah, we'll look at getting a dog," and they're like, "We're getting a dog," and it's like, "No. We said we'd look at it." So no, I agree with you there. I think where we've ended up is sadly where I thought we would. I had hoped Fortnite would be back, and I don't even want to play Fortnite. I don't like Fortnite. My kids play it far too much. I don't even want Fortnite, but all you and I have done is spent the last 2 months talking about Fortnite. It's insane, isn't it?
It is crazy. Again, the end result of all this, I think, is good. Apple should not have as much control over this thing that they do, we'll save it for the main show, because I could quite quickly get lost.
No, but I think what you're saying, just to summarise, is Apple are drunk on their power. The court are getting involved to try and regulate them because they can't regulate themselves, which is what we've been talking about for a long time. And we're back to kind of where we were. Some developers can in America can take payments on their website with links from their app. So win there. This is a win for Spotify. It's a win for Amazon. It's a win for Patreon. But with Fortnite, it's no change.
Yeah, it is absolutely a win, and not for Epic, who started all this kind of stuff for Fortnite.
Yeah, they've started the ball rolling, but they've been blackballed, and they've ultimately lost out.
Well, at the moment, yeah, and we'll see what happens with that, with the sort of power that they've got. But at the same time, these developers can even talk about the fact that you're able to pay for things somewhere else at this point is amazing. And we're going to talk about Apple's other sort of sketchy practices in a minute too, but it's a bit sad for Epic at this point, even though they've started all this process off, but there we are.
Yeah. Should we move on?
Let's move on. And sticking with the App Store slightly, I thought this was it's the first thing on Threads I've ever linked to. Not that I'm on Threads, but this came in via Mastodon for me. Just talking about the state of the App Store, really, that it's fallen behind quite badly in what it offers compared to other sort of marketplaces. So while the focus on the App Store injunction has been mostly on the commission rate, so 30% or 27% or whatever it is for higher earning people, 15%, what's been overlooked is just how far the tools in the App Store fall behind, i.e., most common for payment and subscription still aren't possible in the App Store, including price testing, refunds, managing your subscriptions, plan migrations, gifting, discount codes, subscription bundles, to name but a few. And that's absolutely right, isn't it? If a developer wants to issue a refund, they can't. They've got to go through Apple, and that can take from 24 to 48 hours for the developer to issue the refund via Apple. And customers don't believe that, because Apple put the developers at the forefront of this as being sort of the thing, and they're just the secure, safe thing behind it. A person asking for a refund is going to go, hang on, no, you're the developer, your name is all over this, what's going on? So I think this is fair enough to actually point out the limitations of the App Store, and to say nothing of search, for goodness sake.
Considering the App Store is one of the biggest, it's probably the biggest App Store in the world, its functionality is quite right, actually. It hasn't really changed a huge amount. Obviously, subscriptions came donkeys years ago now, and that was the big thing, and obviously the world has moved to that. But actually, it's pretty rudimentary what we get, and other than a coat of paint every other version of iOS, it hasn't really moved on. It's the same on the Mac. The Mac one is frustratingly more annoying, I think, because they don't do anything with it. So it is a shame that Apple aren't they're spending all their time and effort on litigation rather than actually moving forwards in meaningful ways.
Yeah, I mean, they could really compete with this, couldn't they? Again, as is the theme so often, because they're in a monopolistic position, they don't need to compete, and therefore they don't. So the basic bog standard App Store, which, let's face it, is just iTunes from 20 years ago, is exactly as it was, with, as you say, some prettier screenshots on it.
Yeah, but it hasn't, like I say, it hasn't really moved forward in a meaningful way, which is a shame.
It is a shame, because you would hope they could do something interesting with a storefront. Their website looks pretty good.
Fair.
Anyway, so I just think that's interesting to think about the state of the App Store. And as I say, let's not think about search and what you search for and what gets presented to you when you actually do it.
It's interesting having a Threads link, though, just briefly on the Threads link. I never use Threads. I'm not, as you know, a big social media person, but you don't see a lot about Threads at the moment, whereas we thought it was going to be the big one to come in and eat Twitter's breakfast, lunch, dinner. I can't remember what the saying is. And it looks quite nice. I quite like the layout. It's certainly less egregious than X, but yeah, just interesting. You don't hear much about Threads. That's all.
I kind of see what you're saying. It would be my choice. It's another Meta property, and I just linking to it because it's an interesting comment as much as anything else. But yeah, it's not as big as X and hasn't had the chance to become that toxic hell stew that it is, I guess. But yeah, there you go. Threads, first time featured.
Yep, it was just interesting to see it.
Moving on, Apple is going to unsurprisingly appeal a €500 million digital fine over the EU's silence and compliance talks. So this is about Apple saying they made changes and alterations and all the rest of it, and the EU saying nothing and then just coming out of nowhere and firing them. We don't know what's been happening in communications between Apple and the EU.
I reckon they're both as bad as each other, but as Apple left it very late, EU probably didn't comment quick enough. I think I think they're both as bad as each other.
They probably are. I think you and I are publicly stated as being more on the EU side and all this. I don't think Apple can be an easy company to deal with when it comes to this because of their opinion that all of this belongs to them, and they're doing everyone a favour by sort of only charging 30% commission and not like 100% commission on everything that they sell on their platform or they offer on their platform. So it's got to be tricky on both sides.
Yep, I just wish we were in the EU so we got this stuff.
Yeah, I think...
Actually, I wish we were in the EU for lots of reasons, but this is one of them.
Yeah, that is fair enough. And then lastly in follow-up was just returning to sort of Apple's App Store practices. That in an EU App Store, and this is in Hungary specifically, I think if you do it in other countries in the EU, it's not that, is this warning that comes up, which is a pretty scary warning, really. And this kind of blew up in the week. Mark Warman and others talking about it as well. And this is reported on 9 to 5 Mac here. Is at the top of this, I think it's called Instacar is the name of the app in Hungary, which is you can check a vehicle sort of tax and registration, whether it's been in a crash status is what it is. So it's a thing that looks at physical objects in the world that you then go and make use of for them. And it says, this app does not support the App Store's private and secure purchase payment system. It uses external purchases. Ooh. Which that means going to a website and putting in purchase data, which most of the websites do, frankly, just as soon as you go to the App Store. So that's not that scary, but sticking it right at the top of the app is really, really bad. And I saw another story that Riley from Delta went and put in his app in Delta. This exact thing is that in his app it says this app makes use of in-app purchases, like 2 screens down within the Apple app, and in there it says this makes use of Apple in inverted commas in-app payment system. So you got to be careful making use of those, which I really appreciated. But
yeah, he's giving them a taste of their own medicine, isn't he? But what's interesting on this one, if you read some of the commentary, it was saying about the alert that comes up, it's got a red triangle with an exclamation mark in it. And in Apple's own design notes, they say that is for a real severe warning. You shouldn't just use it for an information screen. But yet here they are using it in their they're not even following their own human interface guidelines. They're using it in their scare sheet, to scare you off the payment. I just think they need to calm down. I agree they need to say, look, you're leaving us. This isn't anything to do with Apple. Just be careful of where you're putting your credit card details, kind of thing. I get that they want that little disclaimer, but that's all they need, and they've just ratcheted it up just too much.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, really. I mean, I presume this is a quite well-known app within Hungary. To make if you're in the market for a car, you probably know all about it. You're not going to be scared by this. You're used to it. And also, we buy things on other websites all the time.
Yeah, this isn't new, is it? But I do get they just need to make sure that it's clear it's nothing to do with them.
Yeah,
and I understand that. But you can do that in a nice way that isn't like the world is about to end and this this is unacceptable. So I just think there's that balance to be had.
Yeah, it's not great. Should we do a little news?
Yes, let's do a little news.
Okay, unfortunately, brace yourself. We're a bit Trump heavy to begin with, unsurprisingly, but let's dive in. So there's been a lot of talk recently about moving manufacturing to the United States. Trump has been on record a number of times by saying that he wants this to happen. He wants iPhones built there. He wants computers built there. They're the greatest country in the world, and they should be able to do this kind of stuff without importing things from anywhere else. Apple, in the meantime, has had a lot of, before Trump came to power, has had a lot of criticism for only building things in China, given the economy that there is, given the attitudes that are there, given the working practices, HR requirements of staff, lots of reasons that China could be slightly problematic for them. At the same time, they're the best in the world at doing this, making small electronics components, dealing with all the environmental conditions that come along with the suppliers, and they've got really, really good at it. So they've been cautiously moving some of their production to India, and I think a little bit in Brazil as well. Is that right? It was Brazil, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's worth just noting, though, how many phones have we bought in the last 10 years as families that we've ever had to send them back, and you hear about people sending their phones back for being, badly manufactured?
Not many.
I've never heard of one. So
No.
I think, to be fair, there is a lot of credibility in how Apple are currently manufacturing it, which is why they've probably been nervous and slow to deviate away from what they've done historically.
Well, I got to think making a phone is a really blooming complicated thing. It's got to be up there with car production for the amount of small components that are in it. The continual improvement that needs to go into it. It's a huge operation to put all those parts in a phone. And we featured that Wall Street Journal article from a few weeks ago about all the components that go into a phone.
I would say yes, but equally I would say it's also a really mature space now, isn't it? We've been building these smartphones for the last 20-ish years that largely have a big screen, that have that form factor. And I get that the process will have changed in 20 years, but we've been doing it for a long time now, kind of like car production. So you would have thought it would have got easier in a way, and therefore would be more of a transferable skill that you could move to other places.
Maybe. The thing is, all systems improve, and you look for, as a company, you look for less waste within your operation process, don't you? So you need to keep your production lines up to date. You need to automate the things that can be automated. The parts change. It's a continuously evolving process. If you make a Volvo V70 and you made that for 3 years, they pretty much come off the line at the end of it 3 years later than as when they started. Whereas if you move to a new production process with different nanometers for the processors, they move the battery around, they take the SIM card out, they do all that kind of stuff. Slightly bigger screen, higher refresh rate displays.
Different materials.
Different materials that were titanium this time around. That is continuous evolution of what it is you're doing. It's broadly the same thing. You're sticking a phone together. But actually, significant components within that could have changed, and the way you put them together could have changed. So I think you're right, overall it's the same thing, but I think there's always efficiencies and changes to be made over the lifetime of that thing. And that's probably not straightforward or cheap for a manufacturer to do. And Chinese manufacturers are really good at this kind of stuff, and I'm sure Indian manufacturers will be just as good at this stuff eventually, but they need to get there. And all of that is to say that this movement to India is seen by Apple as a bit of a lifeline, I think, in Brazil and other countries. But Trump disagrees. So this was an article in The Guardian saying that Trump has a little problem with Tim Cook over Apple's India production. He wants all these things made in America now.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Tim obviously, or Apple, think they're doing the right thing by moving to India to save on tariffs, but it's not really achieving what Trump's set out to do, is it? They're just bypassing it. So I can understand why he's got this little problem. And he's had a call, but it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, because Apple can't move this overnight. They're not going to move this for this year's iPhones that have probably already started mass production. It's also worth noting that obviously this year we had the iPhone 16e, and we've got the regular iPhone 16 and the Pro, and then I was going to say the fall, but come the end of the year, we're going to potentially have the 17 Air and the 17 Pro, and then the 17e is going to follow. So at the point where Apple's going to have more what's the word, segregation in the iPhone market, they're also trying to move production at the same time. It feels like this could go badly.
This is a multi-year thing. You can't just move iPhone production to America in 6 months, is effectively what you're saying. And it's getting more complicated because there's more lines to bring. This is a 4-year job at least. And even then, all the components won't be able to be made in America. You're still going to have to import things from India, from China, from other parts of the world to bring them in. So you're never going to be able to make 100% United States iPhone.
And here's Apple worrying about the App Store when they really should be putting all their effort into this, because this is what pays the bills, is the iPhone, isn't it?
Well, they're a big company with a lot of money, and Tim Cook is the best operations man in the world. I'm sure he saw some of this coming. That's why they were already moving to India and all the rest of it. But it was never realistic to be able to move 100% of iPhone production or Mac production. The only Mac that was ever made 100% in the United States was the Mac Pro, and even that had imported parts from other parts of the world. So I just think it's unrealistic to expect within 6 months of this announcement that, the $500 million, which would have been made to whoever was in charge. It wouldn't matter if the Democrats had won. That $500 million investment would have already been there. It shows a certain ignorance of the state of the world's economy and the way that trade happens.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think the Mac Pro was such a niche product, wasn't it? But I do think Apple will have partly to blame for where we are, because whilst they may not wanted to move it to America, they should have been, mitigating the risk by having it all in China and moving some of it out earlier, because you're just relying on one country, and when your company is big as them, it does feel like they should have had other facilities in place around the world to do this. When they're building so many phones, it does feel like they've left themselves a little bit open to this kind of thing, or where they are just relying upon one source to put everything together for their flagship, the device that really makes the company.
Yeah, it is complicated. Nice. I think I said 500 million. It's actually 500 billion. Apple were going to invest in this. Whatever, it's going to take time. And we were talking before about one of the reasons was China's approach to state media, censorship, moving of iCloud, what it would let phones share within the country. There were lots of reasons to start looking elsewhere. And as you've just said, I think that diversification of having all your eggs in one basket effectively is never a great idea when you're as big a company as Apple and they can just squeeze the particular pipeline you're coming in and you can't make your things. They do need to diversify that across the world. Frankly, just putting them all in America is not a great idea either, given the way the government is there as at the moment. So, interesting.
Yeah, and you kind of want them to do more localized production of some of their parts so that you're not shipping phones all around the world. But yeah, obviously they're working at such a scale that I probably couldn't even imagine. Yeah.
Another thing that I find hard to imagine is what's happened to the head of the ICC. So this is the International Criminal Court. And this could be a quite tricky story to talk about given how these things can be perceived, but just reporting it as it is. The head of the International Criminal Court, who has it's basically an arrest order on Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the Prime Minister of Israel, primarily for humanitarian reasons, in the sense that the ICC felt that Israel was stopping aid getting through to Gazans in trouble. And as a consequence of this arrest order on Netanyahu, Trump has put out there that the ICC can't make use of Microsoft products because they're an American company, so they're unable to access their documents, their emails, and all that kind of stuff. And somehow, the gentleman, Karim Khan, the head of the ICC, has had his bank accounts frozen. He's a United Kingdom citizen, and somehow he's had his bank accounts frozen as well. So not only have they had to move some of their operations to ProtonMail, a Swiss company, we use ProtonMail for this podcast, he's actually lost access to his accounts, and they're damaging the ability of the ICC to function, which these are the guys who looked into all sort of post-Nazi war crimes that took part in World War II and have looked at things since. So I just find this incredible that an international body like this can be sanctioned in such a way, following due process, no matter what their sort of judgment is, to sort of make this swinging attempt to control the organisation based on presumably the fair and right, just judgments that they come to is incredible.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the ICC. I know a little bit more now reading this article, but yeah, just absolutely insane. And I kind of wonder how, Microsoft have stopped them using their emails. Did they get time to get any of the data out and stuff? Like, are they in breach of agreement by just stopping it and terminating it? And it's just, I don't know. It's a really interesting article to read if anybody's got the time to go through it, because the poor guy is being victimized for doing his job, and it feels like he works for the ICC. He's trying to do the right thing. My mind is blown a little bit reading this.
Atrocities in Sudan, doing things like that, and trying to stop war crimes happening, and without coming down one side or the other on the Israel-Hamas situation, Gaza situation at the moment. You want humanitarian aid to get to people, surely. No matter what side of a war, you'd want it to come to Israelis if the roles were reversed. So making those judgments to try and see what's happening with it it feels like absolutely the role of the ICC to me, and this is just incredible. We've talked about Microsoft before and how Azure was being used by one side or the other. It's just amazing.
Yeah. My mind is somewhat blown, like I say.
Yeah. Moving on, let's talk about Facebook for a little bit, or Meta for a little bit. Meta has asked a judge in the United States to throw out an antitrust case mid-trial. This seems fairly extraordinary. So this is a reporting in The Verge. Meta filed a motion for judgment on an antitrust case it's currently fighting. The motion argues that the FTC has failed to provide any evidence that Meta unlawfully monopolized part of the social networking market, something the government argues it did through the acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp. I mean, surely Meta's on slightly dodgy ground here. Feels like they were trying to monopolize the social media market.
100%, because they had all the data, didn't they, showing that people were using these apps where they were, I don't even know how they collected some of this data, but they knew that these apps were just, rapidly growing, and then just bought them. So, maybe Meta are worried.
Well, Meta should be worried, because let's face it, they're under a bunch of DMA. They were fined by the DMA as well. Although I seem to remember they had one thing they did right, where they stepped back. They stepped back from the EU actually approved them of. But this is interesting, isn't it? You've got Microsoft with antitrust stuff going on. You've got Meta with antitrust stuff going on. You've got early days of Apple with the Department of Justice investigating them as well. And all these companies we know have given money towards the current United States government. Is it going to go their way, even though Zuckerberg and Cook and Jeff Bezos and others have thrown the money this way? I'm sure part of what Meta and others were hoping is a lot of these antitrust cases would go away once the Department of Justice might view them more favourably given commands from above. But these last couple of stories about Trump being unhappy about Apple's position in India and this kind of thing make me think maybe that money's not working so well.
I can concur with that. I think it's interesting, isn't it, how the big tech companies, they're all going through this. They've all got too big. They've all got their fingers in too many pies. And I get it. Companies have got to, morph and change to keep up and, focus on new ways of making money and keeping the company the shape and size it is. But it does feel like sometimes there's a lot to be said for staying in your lane, and stick to what you do and get that balance right. Are all these businesses overreaching and trying to dominate everything and just buy out their competition and force people to work their way because they own it all? It does feel like, the company's getting too big, and I don't know, where are we going to end up? Are we going to end up with companies not growing like this again? Is this like the golden era of the biggest companies? Well, we've probably had the golden era, and actually they're all going to get either split up, or they're going to be really governed on what they're allowed to do and not to do because they can't mediate themselves. Or
they'll just be allowed to continue to grow and monopolise, and instead of countries, we'll have companies that rule the world.
We to a degree already have that. I don't know. And I'm reading a book about Meta at the moment from about 10 years ago about it not being a great place to work. And it is super interesting seeing the inside of, assuming that the story is correct, seeing some of the inside of how it functions. It's a company I'm happy I'm not associated with.
Fair enough. A company I'm increasingly happy I'm not as associated with is Microsoft. So this is, Microsoft we flip-flop on a little bit. They've definitely come back from the evil empire that we viewed them as in the sort of 90s. They certainly became a lot more friendly to lots of things, went a lot more open source. We're supporting things like Linux, Windows subsystem for Linux, doing all the right things. It seemed on the surface, at least. Well, in the meantime, being same Microsoft as ever they were. But I thought this was an interesting couple of stories. The first of which is a report on the Register, is that Microsoft is going to pull the plug on Bing's search APIs. So lots of things make use of Bing's search APIs. For example, DuckDuckGo is based on Bing. But the reason that they're doing this is because of the move to AI and LLMs. So they don't feel they need to offer the search in the same way they do. Which, is this the death knell for search engines? Will Google and everything go away because they will be replaced by OpenAI and Copilot and others? It's interesting to think about that. Is this just the first sign that this kind of thing is going to happen? But this is probably going to affect quite a few companies. It's not out of the blue. This was reported on before. I just think that's the first time I've come across it as being an explicit thing.
Yeah, I was thinking this. I thought, I wonder if Microsoft maybe slightly ahead of the curve here, but have gone, look, search is going, so let's start backing out of it. Do you know what I mean? And they're reversing out of their position, which unlike Microsoft, they're famed for having lots of tech debt and not getting rid of things. Check out Control Panel in Windows 11. So I wonder whether they can see what the writing's on the wall, and therefore they're going to divest their search operations and focus on their AI, which kind of makes sense. Like I say, I wonder whether you're going to look back and go, fair play, they called it. Because interesting, just at dinner last night with some friends, a whole range of people in the room, not all techies, but everybody is using OpenAI or ChatGPT for searching and for asking questions and for writing documents. Just the other day, my wife asked it where to go and buy a product for the fridge from, and she just asked OpenAI, and it came back and told her where to get it and the opening hours. And then my son's using it to work out the bandwidth of his computer and what graphics card is going to be optimal in it. It's really interesting. I think the world is moving here, and I reckon they've called it early.
Or nobody was using their APIs and they're just shutting it down.
You got to remember though, Bing is the most unloved search engine out there.
It's because it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
It's bad, and it just never really. It tried to copy Google, and it just never really got there.
Yeah, interesting times, I guess. But yeah, the second interesting time is that Microsoft are offering something which we've all been waiting for. You may be able to say, "Hey, Copilot" to your Windows 11 PC. Are you excited for this, Chris?
I hate all hey things. I think that's what I've learnt. No, I don't use Windows 11 only to play games. I turn off everything. I've uninstalled everything on it. So this is not for me. I get why they're doing it, but it feels like it's going to be like Cortana all over again.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Cortana didn't do well. Who even remembers about Cortana? I think there's probably some webinar conferencing system setups in people's offices that probably still have Cortana buttons and things on them, and I feel sorry for those people. But maybe they'll start working with Copilot instead. But Linux for games, Chris. Linux for games. Moving on. Yeah,
I just haven't got the effort to do it.
But
I would like to do it, but I would have to.
What's the problem?
I just haven't even looked at it. I need to install Battle.net and I need to install Steam. And
yeah, you have to do that on Windows anyway.
I know, but I've already got it all set up on Windows, so I don't have to do it, I think.
This is how they're winning, Chris. That you're just happy to.
I know, I'm a sheep.
They're spoon feeding you. You know, for years I've been the Apple sheeple, but come on now.
I know, I'm a bad person.
Let's talk about something fun. Sony have released their new WH-1000XM6, great snappy name, headphones, which are an evolution of the headphones I'm wearing right now and the headphones you're wearing right now.
I'm mixed on this because I love my headphones. I don't wear them as much as I used to because I've got these little shocks things that I'm holding up for those viewers. These bone conduction headphones, who knew? Fantastic tech, I love it. So I was a little sad to see these come out because I don't have. I've got the current headphones. I love them. I've got the 5s. I think you've got the 3s, 2s, 4s, 2s. They're fantastic headphones, Sony. And so when these came out, I was like, "Oh, don't make me go and buy more headphones. I don't need to spend any money." And that's where I came into the article. And then I watched MKBHD's review. And fair play. It looks like Sony's done a good job.
Yeah, so mine are a few generations old now, so I really quite fancy these new ones. And basically the reviews are everything is better. And the issues they had with the XM5s, like them not folding so well and all the rest of it, they've resolved a lot of that. The case is smaller. The case looks really cool. It's got a magnetic loop on it. The noise cancelling's better. It's got more microphones. I watched Marquez's review as well. And when he did the testing the microphones to camera thing, I thought the new ones sounded fantastic with 12 beamforming microphones on them.
Yeah, I must confess I don't use the mics very often, but if you scroll down it does show them under the battery life segment being folded up. So these headphones look great. I mean, Sony have done a really good job with them. I must confess the app is a bit rubbish, and it looks like one app they've built and then tried to. It's not iOS native, I think is what I'm trying to say. But these look great, and they've changed the power button and things because it is a bit fiddly with the power button and stuff. I think these look fantastic. I do worry in that picture there that you were showing. I worry about the durability. That's my only concern of the folding bit. I could be wrong. Mine don't fold at all. You can put the cup sideways, chuck them in your bag, but they are not small headphones to carry around, which is probably why I don't use them as much. And I take my shocks everywhere. But they are fantastic headphones. I think these are worth waiting though, and wait until there's a sale on, because you'll be able to pick them up cheaper.
Yeah, I think that's fair. At the same time, you need to jump in at some point. I bought these at full price when they were new and they came out as the XM2s. I'll try and show for the camera how small the box is for my headphones because I don't want to take them off while I'm podcasting. But I bought them in 2018, 2019, I think. Certainly pre-COVID. So they've been in and out bags, they've gone around the world, they've been folded repeatedly, and nothing is wrong with them.
Yeah, maybe they're going to be good. And to be fair to Sony, they normally make pretty good hardware.
So I'm really pleased with these, and I'm going to keep my eyes open. There was an offer on, I noticed this week, that you could get them with a free Bluetooth speaker. They're, I think, 399 quid in the UK, so they're a little bit more expensive. That is the only criticism they've received. They're a little more pricey than the outgoing model. But that is the pattern. If you look at Sony headphones, that the outgoing model is significantly cheaper than the incoming one. And fair play Sony. I don't mind the app. I go in, I set it up once, and it's done. You can control everything else from the headphones once you're on there. So, yeah, I'm giving these the side eye at the moment.
They do look good, and for me, they've kept the nice blue colour. They're available in white and black. I would definitely buy these if I was in the market, but I don't think there's enough in there for me. It makes sense for you. They are just fantastic, and they pair really well. You can pair multiple devices with them. Just a great device.
Yours can. Mine, I've got a switch between them. It can only do one at a time. So another reason I want to upgrade, really.
Yeah, I do have that problem with my shocks. I have to switch manually, which drives me a little bit mad. But I do have these paired, I think, with my iPad and my phone. I think they're great devices. Yeah, 100% would recommend. I paid about $250 for my 5s, so I reckon these will come down, but it will be 3, 4, 5 months.
Yeah, I think that's fine. But I'm definitely interested because now these are my podcasting headphones. I don't have noise-cancelling headphones when I travel because I don't remember picking them up off my desk. So I say I don't have noise-cancelling headphones. Of course I've got my AirPods Pro, and the rumour is that AirPods Pro 3 are coming.
This is not a surprise though, is it?
Not at all.
And how do we know there's AirPods coming? There's been a change in the latest version of iOS. Rather than saying AirPods Pro 2nd generation, it now says AirPods Pro 2 or later.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. AirPods Pro are well-received headphones. They're probably the star of Apple's wearables line when we talk about that in the financials every time. I've been really pleased with mine. I will say I must have oddly shaped ears because the right one always wants to fall out no matter what sort of tip I put into them. But other than that, I think they're great headphones. They're in my pocket almost all the time. I use them for walking the dog. They've been on trains and things. The noise cancelling is not as good as these, but you wouldn't expect them to be because they sit in your ear, not over it, blocking out as much noise. Yeah, great headphones. I would be interested in AirPod Pros 3. You'd need to sell me on lots of interesting new features, though, because the 2s are great.
The 2s are great. I must confess, I'm probably not going to buy, for the first time ever, I'm not going to buy some AirPods when they come out because I've just moved away from putting things in my ears and I'm quite happy not to do that.
Yeah, you're a runner, though. You want to hear cars coming at you, whereas I don't care.
I also have not very great ears, so I don't want to put things in my ears. So that's why I've moved to bone conduction. They're not as good, they're not as convenient, they take up more space, but I shall really like them.
If you're happy with them, then that's fine.
Yeah, that's true.
Something that may not be fine. UK Parliament has opted not to hold AI companies accountable over copyright material. I think this is very wrong, actually. Also, I think this reporter is a great name. Lawrence Bonk is a great name. I think AI companies should be held accountable. This is the kind of thing where you can just go and train on whatever's out there, even if it's illegally downloaded and you're making use of somebody else's material as part of it, which we've talked about repeatedly with OpenAI violating this and then just saying sorry afterwards. I think the original art, the right for which should belong with the artist, and I don't think that's that controversial, frankly.
I'm with you on this. I think, I was quite surprised to read this article.
Yeah. It is a worry that I like to think we're better at this stuff and that we're slower, but generally better at this stuff in the United Kingdom. And no, we're not. As proven with Apple and the increased data protection, and now this. Yeah, crack on, AI companies. Britain's open for business. Do what you like.
And that's probably where they've ended up, isn't it? We're behind, so crack on. But it's just the title. Parliament's opts not to hold AI companies accountable over copyright. Like, it sums it up beautifully, but it's not the right thing, is it, at all?
Yeah, this is a Welsh MP, Chris Bryant, who's the MP for Rhondda, who's now Data Protection Minister, said he recognises this could feel like an apocalyptic moment for creative industries, but he thinks that the Transparency Amendment requires changes in the round and not just piecemeal. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's just words, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very political answer. So I don't think this is a great piece of law, as some of our laws haven't been recently. This stealing from artists isn't right, and
completely agree with you.
I guess we are where we are, but it's worth reporting on.
Yeah, I think you and I are aligned on this. If somebody's made something, another company shouldn't have free reign to use it. Yeah,
if you and I went and downloaded a movie, that's not legal, So
I completely agree with you. Or if all the AI companies downloaded all the movies and all the books and everybody's art, it's not legal, is it? They're using other people's material to influence their engines, and then they're charging a fee. It's bonkers.
You wouldn't steal a car, the way those adverts used to go.
Agreed.
Something I quite like the look of, but feels a bit iOS-y, is Google this week announced their move to their new design language. It's called Material 3. It's an expressive evolution of Android's design. I don't know if you watched any of the videos on this. There's links to it in the show notes, obviously, and the Ars Technica link that we're talking about now. It's quite a nice sort of bold design. I quite like it.
I quite like it. It's nice to see him, having this nice design language, because historically Android wasn't considered that design oriented, but this looks fantastic. They've done a great job with it. I think it looks kind of cool, and I think it's going to be interesting to compare this to whatever Apple release on the 9th of June, which is 3 weeks out. It's going to be interesting to see, does Apple lean into what they're doing, or are they going in a different way? But the video you're playing is quite cool. It's a great little video, and it reminds me of when Apple introduced iOS 7, that kind of snapshot of all the things that changed. And I'm super curious to see where Apple go with it and how it compares to this. But I think Google are doing a great job. More now than ever am I giving Google the side eye.
Yeah, totally. The thing I really like about this is sort of the reactiveness of it, that buttons seem to have weight and sliders as you move things around. They squidge against each other and you get a bit of resistance before you move them and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite thoughtful design. So I quite like the look of this, I got to say.
Yeah, no, it does look cool. Like I say, I've never been as Android curious as I am today.
There you go. That's well done, Google. You're making Chris actually pay attention to what's going on that side of the fence.
Imagine that.
They said as they used Google Meet to talk. One thing that I also...
Actually works pretty well, doesn't it? Who knew Google does good cloud stuff?
Well, who knew Google's good? I mean, it's a shame. We should probably find some EU alternatives, but at the moment this is working. Moving on. Sticking with Ars Technica and Google. This is a win. So Nextcloud, an app I've become ever more in love with because it just works and it lets me manage my data myself. It's not sitting in Dropbox or iCloud or Google Drive or any of these things. It's sitting on, one of my computers downstairs in my server room. It's not a server room, but that's what I call it. Google have had an issue since 2024 where you couldn't write to certain parts of the file system for your Nextcloud account, in the same way that Apple does sandboxing on the place that Google was restricting Nextcloud's ability to manage where some of that data went. Anyway, they've changed it, so now the app is entirely able to write to whatever it needs to, so you can store your data in your cloud, which is what Nextcloud does, and well done.
Yeah, well done, but it does feel a bit like, and we've seen this with Apple, isn't it, where an app kind of breaks and then there's a lot of kerfuffle afterwards to then resolve it. So it's a shame it's had to go like that, but it's good it's resolved.
It is resolved. It took too long as well. I wonder if Apple would be as communicative.
I wouldn't imagine so.
Yeah, so well done, Google. And as I say, I hope if something similar happens on iOS. Maybe it doesn't even have the same amount of permissions on iOS. I don't know. The app's really good, I got to say.
Yeah, this will shock you, but I've not overly used it.
I'm not shocked in the slightest, Chris. In fact, I'm so unshocked, I'm just going to move on to the next story, which is more than 1 billion RCS messages are sent daily on Android and iOS. That's a lot of messages.
It is, but there's a lot of iOS devices out there, and I'm not that surprised. Are you? I mean, RCS is becoming a lot more prevalent.
My carrier doesn't support it, though, so I don't know. I mean, it's one of the things that every so often when I think, I might flip back onto Android for a little bit, which, if you'll recall, I did a month of and had no problems with, really. You can get by, you can use other services. I used WhatsApp, for example, largely during the course of that trial. If RCS was live with my carrier, that would make my life an awful lot easier.
Surely you need to change carrier at some point. You don't get eSIMs, you don't get RCS. You know, just saying. I'm just clicking through people I've texted on Android devices, and actually the majority are RCS now rather than SMS.
Yeah, but I pay £12 a month, and I get 120 gigs of data, and I get free EU roaming.
All right, but you can't send RCSs, and you can't have an eSIM.
But I don't really need an eSIM.
What happens if the iPhone Air comes out and you have no choice?
Well, let's save that for a little bit because we're going to talk about state of Apple later. But none of what you said is that compelling. Until I need RCS, I don't really need RCS, and I don't really need an eSIM.
No, it's fair. I am obviously tongue in cheek pulling your leg, but those carriers need to catch up, obviously. But I think it's good. RCS is becoming prevalent. SMS just needs to go away.
Yeah, I agree with that. Another thing that I disagree with or agree with, depending, is I disagree. I just thought this was an interesting article that I came across, or post that I came across on Mastodon, talking about how Google's their court documents during Department of Justice trials, as we've talked about before. Google may be forced to spin out Android, may be forced to sell off Chrome. Maybe there could be consequences for the Department of Justice. So it was just somebody had pulled this out of the court documents, and basically, since Google doesn't have any real competition, it can make the best information hard to find. This is speaking about search, forcing users to stay on Google for longer and interact with more ads. This is dangerous for consumers, most of whom think the best results appear first. The strategy appears to be working from a business perspective. The study suggests that poor organic search results actually benefit Google's bottom line in two ways. They make paid advertisements more valuable to users seeking accurate information, and they force users to refine their searches multiple times, exposing them to more advertising in the process. Fascinating.
It's an interesting take, isn't it? You're right. Why are Google motivated to have good or better organic searches when they want you to click on the ad one at the top?
Yep. Or this wasn't quite right, I'll search again. So you can present them with different advertisers, or you can do something else. It's when you're in a monopoly position, this is the kind of thing you can do.
Yeah, so I'm not a Google user, as we know. I'm still clinging on to DuckDuckGo. But actually, as soon as you read this, it's like, actually, it makes complete sense, doesn't it? Because if they had really good organic searches, which is what they became very famous for, it means their revenue would go down. And companies like chasing the money rather than following their company values.
Yeah, and again, if you just made good products, people would use it and the money would come.
Yeah, that's that Socrates quote, isn't it?
It is. It certainly is. And well done you for spotting it. Shall we do Car Corner, or have we got any other news?
No, let's do Car Corner because I didn't see this one come in this week.
Yeah, so out of the blue, and revealed by Top Gear, of all places, new CarPlay Ultra is a thing now. So I sent you this straight away, and you seem to get quite excited.
I'm a big CarPlay fan, as we know. I do not have a car that's going to use CarPlay Ultra because currently it's only available in an Aston Martin in US and Canada. But I don't think anybody saw that CarPlay Ultra was coming this week. It's weird they've called it CarPlay Ultra, I must confess. But Apple have launched their next-gen CarPlay, which they originally announced back in WWDC in 2023. So it's nearly hit its 2-year announcement anniversary. It was meant to ship late last year. It's finally out. I'm glad they've delivered it because it did feel like it was going nowhere. I'm a massive CarPlay fan. They've launched it, and I was keen to see what it looked like, even though I'm not going to obviously get a car with this. And some of it looks quite cool, as you can see. Rod's shown some of the video now. But what I found really odd with it is some of it doesn't look that Apple. And then when you go to the entertainment screen, it just looks like regular CarPlay. I thought they might have given it a lick of paint. Do you know what I mean? And the CarPlay we all use hasn't really changed much in the last 5 years. I thought it might refresh the UI a little bit and just make it look a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, it's really quite dull looking. Other than its integration with speedometers and rev counters and fuel and battery state of charge and all the rest of it, there isn't that much there really. And just giving an Apple lick of paint to what's going on here, even at the start of this video, which I recommend you watch if you're at all interested in this, is that the head of Mercedes said, why would we allow Apple to have control of our brand? And
which I do kind of get, but equally what I do quite like with this kind of tech is, and I've fitted a CarPlay head unit to a 20-year-old car, and it's great because it feels like you're driving a modern car, and that is the one benefit of this kind of tech in that, if you keep that car for the next 5 to 10 years, because the thing that really ages a car is its tech generally, you can keep it current, and I think that is kind of cool in a way. But I do understand it. I'm amazed Aston Martin have done it, a really prestigious brand, but maybe their tech stack just isn't there, and actually this is a really good partnership for them.
It's kind of going against the flow though. Most big brands either have their own thing, see General Motors, or they're making use of Android Automotive, which they can skin and make use of in any way that they want.
And they're kind of like forking it and really making it their own. Like BMW have done it with their latest iDrive system. I think it's interesting. I think time will tell whether this is cool tech or not. And I just don't think we know the answer yet. But they are giving up more of the dash, aren't they? That is the thing.
Yeah, and my suspicion is the automakers were happy when it was just as you've described it for your second-hand, your car's head unit, where you get your maps on there, you get your entertainment on there, and all the rest of it. But it's not changing the overall look of the car, of the dials, of the speedo. You can't think Ferrari are just going to want some generic Apple-looking thing as part of their brand.
Yeah, and what we don't know, I think, is how much can they customize it to make it look Aston Martin-esque or Ferrari-esque. On here, it looks very Apple-esque. And actually, I'm a bit underwhelmed by some of the design. Like here, you can see in the screen grab, you got the map and then you got the two dials. Well, why is the map not underneath all the dials? And it just looks, I don't know, it just doesn't look all that exciting for something that's been a long time being fully baked.
Yeah, you're not alone with that. So Quinn Nelson from Snazzy Labs also says, CarPlay Ultra, terrible name, looks like garbage. Some of the worst tap targets I've ever seen in any car ever. Like, what is this list? 3 2x2 buttons.
So can you click on the left image?
Yeah.
There you go. That's just CarPlay, isn't it?
It's just CarPlay. With ridiculous tap targets.
Yeah.
And then, we do not want or need Swift UI in the car. Fair. This is just wretched. I'm kind of with him.
That screen just looks odd there, but I don't know. I think it needs to bed down. There's going to be updates. It's just weird they've shipped it with no real commotion and didn't really announce it was coming. And I don't know, I just find it all a bit odd, the whole launch of it. Maybe they're not that. Maybe it's not what they wanted, and they're doing a bit
I suspect what they thought was going to happen is every automotive manufacturer was going to get behind them and they were going to have a big splash. And what you're getting is people like Mercedes going, absolutely not. And you're getting General Motors going, absolutely not. Which isn't to say there's no one. I mean, Land Rover, Lincoln, Audi, Volvo, Honda, Nissan, Ford, Porsche, Jaguar, Acura, Polestar, Infiniti, and Renault have all said that they'll do it.
That's quite a list.
It is quite a list. But, I mean, there's some big names missing off here. Where's Volkswagen?
There is. And yeah, Volkswagen aren't exactly famed for their amazing in-car tech right now. They had a few missteps, didn't they, with their ID line. There's a lot missing, but are we going to reach a point 5 years from now where Apple stand up on stage and go, 90% of all cars sold in the last year have got CarPlay Ultra in it because it's the best? So you just, is it going to end up that way? Is it the long game? So I'm skeptically curious to see what's going to happen.
Skeptically curious. I think that's a good place to leave that. Should we do some media?
Yeah, let's do it.
So first up, we talked about Long Way Home last week. You'd seen the first episode. I hadn't. I've now seen the first 2 episodes as well. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's really cool. I've seen them all. I think we're up to the third one. It's really good. It's very humble TV. It's really nice to watch. Just seeing parts of the world. I love it. I think it could be a bit longer. They seem to whiz through countries. I think they could have stretched it out, and it would have been good in a way to have a longer planning episode, because they didn't really detail how they planned the trip. And I'd like to know how much do they line up and how much is just circumstance. I'm curious about that. And it's kind of the same with Top Gear. How much did they plan before they did a road trip and how much was circumstance? It's funny you saying that. I read the Guardian review of Long Way Home, and they said there's too much faffing about, at the start. They spend too long planning it. They spend too long to, that's the problem with this show. It's just a bit slow.
I'm all right. I'm all right with all of it. I think it's really well done. I just all right. Well, maybe do a bonus one at the end of if you want to see how we plan it and how we did it and the 2 months that happened. But this is a show that was filmed last June and is obviously being aired now.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's right back in the spirit of it, and it's so bad. I was looking at motorbikes again yesterday because I want to go and do another road trip. So yeah, it's probably bad for me.
I'd love to do one in my car. It's just motivated me. I think you should do something in my car.
No, the bike trip is it's for my youth. It was one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah, but I'm a car guy. I want to go in my car.
Yeah, but the point is you're out in the fresh air and you smell your environment. And you really
just open the window.
It's different. Anyway,
I've got a sunroof. Should we move on?
I'm lost for words. Let's talk about Taskmaster instead. Are you keeping up with this season of Taskmaster, season 19?
Sadly not. We've watched a couple of them. I think I've missed episode 3 thus far, but it's one I need to schedule with my kids, whereas Long Way Home is I'm watching on my own, so it's a bit easier.
This, I think, is Taskmaster back at its strongest. This has been the strongest start to a season in 5 or 6 years. Not that the last season wasn't great, but all the previous ones were good. But this is absolutely terrific television. I have laughed out loud at every single episode so far.
Yeah, I think I said the other week my son was chuckling away to himself while he watched it. So we will be watching it. We're just a little behind.
Yep. Have you caught up with Murderbot, new on Apple TV?
No, I haven't started another one. I'm a bit annoyed with Apple because they bring everything out on a Friday. And I've had Long Way Home, the John Hamm Neighbours thing, and then now Murderbot's entered the mix, which has annoyed me a little bit because I wish they'd stagger their launching in a week, because why does it all have to be on a Friday? You get 3 or 4 shows on a Friday, whereas I've got 7 days in a week. So this is on the list. I will give it a go.
So I have watched the first 2 episodes. Alexander Skarsgård plays a security bot who becomes self-aware, and he's tasked with looking after some colonists or researchers on a planet and everything that happens. And it's quite good. I got to say, they're only 30-minute episodes. They're worth a chuckle. Pretty good. Quite enjoying Murderbot so far.
I like the sound of the shorter episodes, actually. That makes that a bit more fit. I can fit that in.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, the sort of, while he's meant to be protecting these people, instead, he suddenly gets access to soaps and things like that. So what he's doing, instead of doing his job properly, is watching the soaps that are ongoing on his thing. And that's where sort of his appreciation of humans kind of comes from. So, yeah, it's a good show. I think it's worth a watch.
Okay, I'll give it a go. And this guy, Alexander Skarsgård, he was in Succession, I believe, if I got that right. He played the guy who ended up buying the media empire. Okay.
So, son of Bill Skarsgård, who has been in Marvel films and in ABBA and in Chernobyl and others, and there is another brother, Skarsgård, as well. And I think there's a third Skarsgård that isn't related, but there's a bit of a Skarsgård empire.
Dynasty, you might say.
You might say.
Is he really called Bill, the dad?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I thought he had a different name.
Am I thinking Stellan? He's Stellan Skarsgård.
Stellan. That's right, Stellan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Stellan. He's Bill in ABBA, the ABBA film. That's what
he's been in everything, hasn't he? He was like in Ronin, and he's just been in so many films.
Yeah, he's a great actor, and his sons are great actors too.
Yeah, I was impressed with him in Succession. I thought he played a very odd character in Succession. So
one of them is in the horror film It. He plays the clown in It.
I'm not ever going to watch that.
It's something you have watched, though, presumably?
No, I'm not. I don't do horror.
No, this is something you've watched, presumably.
I haven't watched this, but I just thought I'd raise it here. In that I just looked interesting. Death President Now is an Apple film that's just come out. Again, like on Friday, I think it was. And it's a documentary about a deaf university. Many years ago, they were trying to appoint a president for the university that wasn't deaf and wasn't necessarily aligned with deaf people. And it's just quite interesting. It's just something I've never heard about. I think it was back in the 80s, and there was massive riots about it and things because the deaf community of this university wanted a president that was deaf to be aligned with them. And I'm going to go and watch this at some point when I get a couple of hours. I just thought it looked really interesting, and it's real life, and I've never heard about it.
No, I'd never heard about it either. I actually thought it was a film. So the fact that it's a documentary I found slightly surprising. So yeah, it looks interesting. Yeah,
it just looked quite interesting and appealed to me. So I just thought I'd mention it here as something maybe to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. Games?
Yes.
Quick PSA, I haven't played any games. The fact that you haven't put any links in here makes me think you haven't played any games either.
I've played Warcraft 2 Remastered. I'm on level 8, just saying.
I presume you haven't played any games either. this is just a PSA that it might be time to change your Steam password. There's a chance that they leak data from 89 million accounts all over the dark web. You should always change your account if these things come to pass, but apparently Valve have reacted differently. Yesterday, we've been made aware of reports of leaks of older text messages that had previously been sent to Steam customers. We examined the leak sample and have determined that this was not a breach of Steam systems, so I'm not entirely sure what's happened here. If in any doubt, get out there and change your passwords. I've got lots of games in my Steam library. I'd hate to lose it. However, I've moved to two-factor authentication for Steam, and now device authentication as well. You can only access my Steam account via my iPhone and the Secure Authenticator app. So I feel relatively comfortable about this, but you should never rest on your laurels too much.
Agreed. I've done all the things that you've done. Always do 2FA where you can, 100%.
Yeah. So, but there you go. Steam apparently not leaking everywhere like the Co-op or Harrods or others, but it's not to say it hasn't happened before.
It's not been a good month for cyber, has it?
It really hasn't. It's a great time for the United States to start firing all their cyber experts, thankfully. So that's worked out really well.
Moving on. Main show? Yes, it's it.
Pretty short. Not going to be surprising to anyone. Just a little examination of... this was sort of prompted by an article from Six Colors by their new columnist, Glenn Fleischman. Can we still love Apple? Should we ever have? Which I thought was an interesting and quite provocative title, really. And it boils down to our relationship with a company and how we view them. And I think you and I both came to this from a position of skepticism. Why would I want one of these Apple things? To interest. This actually does some interesting things. It's presented in a different way, and I can kind of get on with it. To, if not love, certainly rampant enthusiasm for the products that they made, software, hardware, the developments that they'd come out with, slavishly watching all the media that they put out in terms of WWDC or product announcements or creating a podcast about the company. Any of those kinds of things. That's the path we've taken, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because back in the early 2000s, they were the underdog, but they were doing something different. They had really cool hardware. The OS looked amazing. And they were doing some amazing things. And obviously there was like the move to Intel, then there was the iPhone and the iPad. And for me, all these devices I'm still using today.
Yeah, so a lot of history. But as has become evident over it's probably the last 5 years, really. There's always been issues with Apple. You know, they've never always produced 100% great products. The most recent of which being the MacBook Air with the broken keyboards, with the butterfly keyboards that they didn't get out there and fix.
And they went too thin on some devices, and they didn't have big enough batteries. There's always compromises, weren't they? But on the whole, they had a good batting average getting the compromises right. Great design, and their company values were what most people saw in a company.
And that's back to what we were talking about before. And John Siracusa has that Socrates quote as well, I think. About you build great products and people come, effectively. I mean, I bet Socrates didn't mention products. You're paraphrasing slightly. But it is that. If you build a product that everybody's going to like, you build the mountain comes to Muhammad, effectively, doesn't it? That's sort of the allegory there. Whereas the shift in the company has been, and the court documents have shown this, the shift has been away from the products and onto the profits. And that might be where everything started to go wrong, even if you go back as far as the butterfly keyboard, is that Apple saw an unlimited money stream in us as consumers, in us as developers, in us as people who make decisions to buy technology for the businesses in which we work, that we were hooked on the good products, we were happy in the ecosystem, we didn't realize quite how high the walls had become within that. And that's sort of slightly poisoning our view of the company. Actually, it's more than slightly poisoning. It is poisoning the view of the company. That you said earlier in the podcast that when you buy the new iPhone Air, I don't know if I'm going to buy an iPhone Air.
That's a fair point. That's interesting. See, for me, I don't think I've got my head into shifting away yet.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm just a week ahead of you at this point, but it's difficult. And, living in Linux land recently has shown me how difficult this is going to be. I have 30 years of experience now of using Apple platforms. This is what I've known the Mac since OS 8.5, before the version.
Way before me.
Yeah, so it's not like it's an easy thing for me to do this. And yeah, I talk on this podcast about I'm running Linux this and I'm doing that and I've got that Docker container and all the rest of it. But my comfort was I'd always come back to an environment that I knew inside and out. It did exactly what I wanted it to, or at least it did exactly as it much as it let me do. And that might be a slightly different way of thinking about it, is that even from back in the day, the Mac was fine. You could do what you wanted pretty much on the Mac, but the second we got the App Store, everything changed. And it's a talk about golden handcuffs, that the ability to do all the things that you can do on your smartphone. And Google's no better. I'm not, I'm going to put Google in the same thing here. That attitude from Apple, from how it treated us as customers, that it's not my device anymore. Apple's letting me pay an awful lot of money to use what they bless on there. And it's kind of affected the Mac, particularly if you use the Mac App Store, in the sandboxing and everything that happens. And it's really beginning to bother me the more I think about continually giving this company money that I used to have so much time for and so much respect for what they did. And the fact that they still, and the kicker, they still make such amazing hardware with fantastic battery life that's really performant, but they stop me doing everything I want to do on it. And that's really becoming a problem. And the iPad absolutely typifies that.
So you are definitely ahead of me in your thinking. So I've obviously bought a MacBook Air. I love the hardware; is amazing. Like every time I look at that thing and use it, it's beautiful. And I wanted a MacBook Air because I do actually want to do some coding in Xcode, which I've been doing a lot this week. So I'm not quite in the place you are. I think I'm more just a frustrated user, still begrudgingly hoping that Apple will turn around at some point and realise, are they going to turn around? That is the big question now. Are they going to have a change of mindset? And I don't know. And I don't think we're going to see much in June at WWDC because it's too soon, and I don't think they're in that place. But they need, I think there's been a big call, obviously, for a change of leadership. But at some point, I hope they wake up and go, right, let's get back to our core principles of providing a platform for people to go and make good stuff. That's what the Mac was for. We provide the tools for you to go and make things. And they've gone away from that. So I'm not where you are, but I understand exactly where you are. And it is incredibly frustrating. But then is Google any better, as we've just seen, when we talk about them, serving up worse search results to drive you clicking on their links. So I don't know what the best options are at the moment.
No, Google is no better, and that's the slightly frustrating thing, and that's why people say it's a duopoly. It totally is a duopoly. From a smartphone point of view, I think we've got options when it comes to our computers and the software we can choose to run on them, thankfully. And I know the open source bug is getting me, and it is harder. This is it. I can't recommend everybody goes and just sticks Linux on the computer, but I think it's got to be worth the effort for lots of people to stop just, with a fish hook is in your mouth. I'm going to make a disgusting reference here, and I apologize, kids. If you're listening to this, turn this off now. If somebody's always pissing in your face, eventually you need to turn your head. And frankly, that's the way I feel both Google and Apple are treating us at the moment, is that they're just there and they're going, you're just going to have this, aren't you? You're just going to put up with it. You're just going to keep giving us the money. You're not going to think very hard about it, because that one sticky thing, it's a game. It's an app you've got to use. You use Photoshop or whatever it is. Instead of relearning how to do something else and actually going through a little bit of pain for longer term gain and making use of the open source alternative that we've got in terms of computers, we're just going to take it. I've made the decision. I'm going to use this laptop. The battery's nowhere near as good. The fans come on. But at the same time, I've got at least every piece of software in it is under my control, and I know what's happening with the data. I've still got to use some bloody Microsoft products and all the rest of it, because I'll log on to their website to get my email. But it's a price I'm willing to pay at this point. Is I am hurting myself for the benefit of what I think will be ultimately a better goal, and it upsets me because I have been such a flag bearer for the company for such a long time.
Yeah, and it's hard to back a company that you don't believe in their values anymore, especially when you came to them, because they seem to have good values and morals, and they've gone so far from that.
And the frustrating thing is, on the phone side of it, is there is no escape. You can install, you can get an old Pixel, you can install Lineage or something on there, and you can sandbox the Google Play Store and run things. But how do I pay for my parking? I've got very used to the convenience of being able to, just buy stuff on my phone. Really difficult.
That feels like you're hamstringing yourself at that point.
I guess for now, you can still go and put coins in a machine or tap your bank card against it. But everybody uses a smartphone for everything. The expectation is that the smartphone is what you've got in your pocket to do things. And it's not going to go away. And it's in Google and Apple's interest to make it harder and harder to get out of that. And it's quite a horrible situation to be in when you think about it.
Yeah, how much of our world relies on a smartphone? Everybody's got an app, like you say, to pay for your car park. Your people use a lot of Apple Pay, Google Pay to check out. You go into shops and they want vouchers. They're generally in the app for that supermarket or whatever it may be, or their bonus points card will also be in the app on your device. So we are in a complicated place, I think.
And the web doesn't always cut it. So the example I would think of is my daughter who worked for Nando's. Nando's do their rotating via an app on an Android or iOS. That's how they get their rota.
Because everybody's got one of those two things.
So because everybody's got one of those two things, you're going to check it all the time to see if you can get into work or not, and that's that. I mean, presumably there's a web front end to that, but who's going to do that? They're just going to put their smartphone out their pocket. They've absolutely got us hook, line, and sinker into this lifestyle, and I've advocated this lifestyle for years and years and years, and it's kind of been a wake-up call for me. I think actually think about this, and I don't know what the resolution is. It's not like I'm going to give up a smartphone. I can't for all the reasons we've just talked about. But it's slightly worrying how it's not just addicted to it. It's just an essential part of life now, and for it to be completely owned by a monopoly, either side of it, I think is a problem. And John Syracuse, and I've linked to his article last week, made this sort of comparison in America that when you become so big that you've got more power than the governments and your country and the rest of it, your monopolistic rule gets taken away. The railroads get privatized. The electricity companies get privatized. The phone companies get privatized. So there is competition within those markets, and I genuinely think we're there.
Yeah, we are in this, like you say, we're in this duopoly. I noticed it when I got smartphones for my parents, who just had basic Nokias, and then we reached the point where they wanted to control their home or see cameras or pay for car parking, or get email and average text messages, and us be able to send them pictures of the family or whatever it may be. A smartphone is a given, isn't it? And there are only two. Frustrating. There's only two options, and even then, when you get the two options, pretty much everybody's got WhatsApp installed. I'm the anomaly there, I think. And there's only two options, and then there's only a few limited communication options that are really widely adopted. So we have ended up blindly walking down this road, I think. It's a bit of a shame. In a way, it's a pity the Palm OS didn't work out, and we had web-based mobile phone tech. I don't know what the outcome is, though, because it feels like we're locked into this until we have a point where everybody's wearing Meta Ray-Bans or whatever they are that's replacing our phone, maybe. Or do you think we're going to end up with people actually going back the other way, carrying cash in their pockets and purposely walking away from all the tech? I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, we talked last week about this move to light phones and less notifications and things. Maybe there will be a sort of more conscious urge to disengage with technology or handheld mobile technology to a certain extent. But we're just so dependent at the moment. I don't see how it can go. So for myself, I think where I can in my computing life, I'm going to try not to buy so many Apple products as once upon a time I did. And we've talked about great Sony headphones. I've got a good laptop now that can do almost everything I want. And if I was willing to go through the pain of working out how to do the editing and the audio editing of this podcast, I could probably get rid of even more things.
Wow.
I switch my Mac off in the week. I've got this amazing little Mac Mini. I switch it on to do this podcast, and I switch it off again. And that says more about my sort of love affair with Apple than sort of anything else. I carry a smartphone because I have to. I used to use a Mac because I wanted to. And the fact that I don't make that choice is really quite interesting.
It is quite interesting. And I'm probably in a different place to you with my phone, in that I've removed most of the apps off my phone because I don't want to be sat in front of my phone time wasting. But I've stayed very much in the Apple ecosystem because I want to build apps for it. I've always wanted to publish an app, and I've got a work opportunity that's allowing me to do that now. So I'm trying to follow that thing because it's just something I've always wanted to do. Should I be doing it on Apple, or should I have gone to Android? I don't know. But I've already got the head start on the Apple side because I understand some of it, and I'm trying to pick my battles a little bit at the moment.
But the way they're treating their developers, it's got if you, at that point you're a consumer and a developer.
Yep.
And we see the rage, and I use that word deliberately, in the developer market for the way that they're being treated by Apple. Developers made Apple what it is. They made the products that made people come to the platform, and that's the way they get treated.
We used to come for the good Mac apps, didn't we? And now they're just not there.
That was it. It was people came to the Mac to use Final Cut Pro. People came to the Mac to use the best implementation of Photoshop or whatever it was. Pick your poison. Graphic designers used Macs and wore turtlenecks. That was always the perception of them, because it worked so much better on the platforms, because the apps had thought and they followed the design guidelines and all the rest of it. I don't think that's the case. And I genuinely think that's the reason that the Vision Pro is failing, is because the developers weren't there. If there were amazing apps for that very expensive device, people would buy it and use it. But the apps aren't there. The iPad is the same. There are apps for it, but largely it's a very good web tablet with a great battery that you can watch iPlayer on effectively, you know. And I don't mean to diminish it. Of course, there's Word and stuff on that, but then you're adding it, and effectively what you're turning it into is a slightly rubbish Mac because you put a keyboard on there without the ability to multitask or have things run in the background and all the rest of it. And that sort of deliberate crippling of the device, plus the why build a great app if Apple can just knock it back? And quite often do just knock it back. If you spend all your time building this app and you put one thing into it that Apple find a little bit controversial, they won't let it in the App Store. And you'll have wasted a load of time. Now, in your case, that's probably not going to be the thing, but
that's not going to be the end of the world, even if that was the case. And I'm just trying to code a game. I'm not even making anything controversial. But it would be frustrating. But for me, I want the challenge of learning. Can I do it? Can I get an app to a position where I can launch it? But it is. I don't know. We're in a weird place, aren't we, at the moment? We are in a very weird fork in the road, and I don't think we're the only ones there.
No, I'm sure we're not. And what the result of this is, I don't know. I mean, if Apple come out at WWDC and say, right, everything's changed, we're going to throw the chessboard up in the air and everything's great, will I immediately become back to the company, all, you know, with love in my eyes for the company again? I don't know. I think they've got to come a little bit further. They're burning me. And I'm not turning to Microsoft because they're worse. And that's one of the arguments for always being on the Apple side of the fence is Microsoft were always worse. And I think they're still just as bad, but I think they're just, I think they're as bad as each other at this point. Apple are behaving...
They probably are as bad as each other.
Yeah. Apple are behaving as a monopolistic company in the same way that Microsoft did and do. And that's the end of it. And at the end of the day, capitalists got a capitalist, you know?
To a point. How much money does any one company need?
Or one man meat, but there we go. Right, I think that we've both made our feelings felt clear about that. I think we've talked about it enough, but I think it's worth mentioning explicitly kind of where we are with them.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But I think there's a lot of people at this place. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's not a tech person, but he's elected to carry money and stop using it and not use as much on his phone, and where he can not use the phone unless he has to.
Yeah, it's interesting. What will the future bring us? I don't know.
World peace.
Yeah. One thing it will bring us prior to WWDC is improved accessibility, so we won't go into this in any great detail at all. But as last year and the year before, Apple drop a bunch of stuff to help out people who have issues with accessing the devices prior to WWDC, and we're getting the same this time. Of note, accessibility nutrition labels, so highlighting features within apps and games on the App Store. I think that's a good thing. The magnifier app on the Mac, there was an advert for this that I saw that they put out on YouTube. So if you've got your phone in continuity mode, you can connect that to your Mac and you're able to straighten up the screen or change the color of the text so you can see it better. Vehicle motion cues expanding to Mac. So if you're in a vehicle, you'll get the same vehicle motion cues.
This blows my mind because I can't even look at anything when I'm a passenger in a car. So the fact somebody wants to sit on their Mac and use it blows my mind. But I kind of get it because I'm probably in the minority here.
Applies to trains too, of course, airplanes.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah. New accessibility reader, live captions coming to Apple Watch, enhanced zoom on Apple Vision Pro. 3 people will enjoy that. Braille access will turn the iPhone, iPad, and Apple Vision Pro into a full-featured Braille note taker. That's pretty cool. I presume you need a specialized keyboard for that.
It's quite cool.
Yeah. Personal voice will become faster and easier to use. I don't think that product's sweeping the world, but there we go. And CarPlay will support a large text option. So, yeah, solid updates.
And something Apple's always done really well is accessibility, to be fair to them. So I'm glad they've kept that value, but can we get back to all their values, please? In link to what we've just been talking about, this is really good that they do so much for accessibility.
Exactly that. Let's go back to the company you were about 2007, please.
Or just before the iPhone came out.
I deliberately picked that date.
And we'd just gone to Intel. Those were crazy days.
Those were the days. Get off my lawn, you kids. Shall we do App of the Week?
Go for it.
Very simple. I've talked before about I'm beginning to use a lot of Docker on things. Docker is it's not a virtualization technology, but it's an ability to run little containers with very dedicated things in them consistently across platforms. Occasionally I want to control them on my phone. The app I use to control my computer is called Portainer. It's sort of a visual way of looking at your containers. Harbor is a means of actually accessing that on your phone, so I can start and stop and see what the status of my containers are at all times. A decent size on my screen, because you use your phone for everything, right? And Harbor cost me $2.99 in the App Store. Works really well. Exactly what I needed. Very simple. Big fan. Harbor.
This is somebody that keeps giving Docker the side eye, so I need to actually get on and use Docker, and maybe this is something that I can do as part of that.
Start with Portainer. Docker's really easy to get up and running, and maybe we can talk about that one week if you want. If you want an idiot's guide to Docker from an idiot, then I'm quite happy to do that.
Maybe that's something we can do if there's a slow news week and Apple have sorted out all their litigation.
Yeah, let's do that. Thing of the week?
Thing of the week. So for me, because I've been coding all week, I've coded every day this week. And all I'm trying to do, even if I just spend 10 minutes, just move what I'm trying to do with my app along in a basic way. But I've been using Stack Overflow a lot, and I forgot how much I used to love Stack Overflow, because it's kind of like Google, but for coding. You just pop in there the language you're using and the problem you've got, and generally somebody else a little bit up the road in front of you has had the same problem, and there's some good articles and answers, and I've just always loved Stack Overflow. It's always been a great tech forum, so that was my thing of this week.
Not ChatGPT.
I did use ChatGPT once, but again, I think it's just my old man needs rewiring to go there first. And actually, I did use ChatGPT to help me with doing something with dynamic variables, and I didn't know the answer, and actually it gave me a really good result. And really well explained. I was pleasantly surprised. So I will probably fiddle more with ChatGPT 2.
There you go. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot, or he's on Blue Sky and he's at g5maniac.bsky.social. I am at _CJP at mastodon.social if you want to reach out to me, or you can watch us on YouTube by going to wakefromsleep.com and clicking on the YouTube link, or drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.